This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so we're going to do something a little bit different with the roll call tonight. I'm going to ask each of you to say your name and your position or title, such as if you're a board member or an alternate, etc. Excuse me. So who wants to start?
I can.
Well,
Okay, Angie.
Bill, you had a
Angie
question?
DeSanto. Angie DeSanto, regular member.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next.
Paul
Bill
Varga,
Folletti, ex officio, Board of Selection.
clerk.
Okay, Paul Varga, clerk. I got Bill Folletti, selectman official. Maybe I can just call the names and then you can repeat your name and position. It won't be so confusing. John Kopak,
That's me, regular member.
Garth Bean,
Yes, regular member, as far as I know.
Jesse Burnham,
Jesse Burnham, regular member.
okay, and Judith Austin, chair. So we have a full seated board. Who do we have as alternate sitting?
Christina Davis, alternate.
Thank you. Do we have Hugh McKenzie? Esther Jagosinski? No.
So somebody sounds like they have a television on in the background. Could that TV get turned off, or somebody needs to mute themselves so we don't hear it?
Okay, so the next agenda item is for communications. The first, we have a couple communications. The first communication I have to share is the town clerk, Sherry Mulch, was approached with concerns about how the December 9th, 2020 meeting was conducted and reached out to town council for advice. Town council has permitted the board to move forward with the appointment of John Kopeck, who was sworn in on January 11th, 2022 for the term of 11/19/2019 to 11/18/2025. I will send the attachment for the email of concern to attach to the meeting. The second item is from King and King. I had reached out to them for an engagement letter, told them that we had gone and approved the 1-year contract. They had reached out to me and said, thank you for the good news. We would normally send you an engagement letter at this point, but there are new audit standards becoming effective, and we are waiting for the revised language that we are supposed to incorporate. They say it's coming soon, so after it does come out, we'll send you the engagement letter. So we'll be waiting for that, but they know that we're on for the year. The next agenda item I have, number 4, is for public comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody have any public comments? No? Okey-doke.
Not public comments.
Okay, so we're all set. Then we'll move to item number 5. The motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting Thursday, December 9th, 2021. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the special meeting?
Jesse Burnham, so moved.
Jesse beat me. Paul Varga, second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Paul Varga.
Jesse Burnham, aye.
Judy Austin, aye. So I got Jesse, Paul, myself. Angie, did you say aye?
Yeah, I did. Angie DeSanto, aye.
Any abstains?
John Kopeck, I abstain.
Any opposed? Angie, Judy, Jesse, Angie.
Judy, this is Paul, shouldn't Garth be an abstention as well? He wasn't at that meeting.
I thought that was Garth. Who abstained?
It was John, but you're right, Paul. Yes.
The meeting.
So we have Judy, Angie, Paul, Jesse. So we have 4 in favor and 2 abstain. Motion passes.
So I had just 2 corrections to the, maybe I should have said this earlier, but I had 2 corrections to the special meeting minutes.
Okay. Who is this? Sorry.
It's Christina Davis. There were just
Hi,
2.
Christina.
Hello. So there were 2 corrections for the special meeting minutes. One, there was just a mistake with a period for Mr. Burnham on the nominated John Kopeck. There's a mistake with the period there. And then in the next motion, there's a parentheses that's missing. After Hugh McKenzie, it should be closed parentheses.
Thank you. Is everybody still okay with approving the minutes as written?
Yeah, I don't know what the formal procedure is, but those are just typos. They don't affect the actual text of the minutes. So
Right, but
I
since
didn't
she
make the
wanted to
motion, but yeah, I didn't make the motion. Jesse did, but yeah. So Christina, next time after the motion is made, the second is made, that's when you need to bring up the changes or discussion, just for reference.
Okay.
I don't know personally what.
I can slow down.
No, it's not that. It's just I'm trying to think if there's any issue with it. They're literally typos, like the
before we
period is
vote.
a space on. If you want another motion, Judy, I'll make a motion to approve it as amended.
Just to be sure that we're all on the same plane, we'll do it. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything, right? So move to approve the minutes of the special meeting as written.
Yeah, I'll move to approve them as amended by Christina's corrections.
Jesse Burnham,
Sec-
I'll second that.
Second, oh, okay.
Okay, so Paul and Jesse. Okay, item number 6. So I'll handle this one a little bit differently then.
Hang on, I think you
Motion-
got to vote on that.
Oh,
I
because we
think you need to
motioned
vote on
again.
that motion too, Judy. Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
Angie DeSanto.
Jesse Burnham, aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
John Kopeck.
Garth?
Yes, of course. Abstain again.
Okay. So 4 in favor, 2 abstain. Motion passes. The next item is number 6, motion to approve minutes of regular meeting Thursday, December 9th. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting for Thursday, December 9th?
Angie DeSanto.
Varga, second.
Okay, so I have,
So-
I have
Wait a minute. Wait.
corrections.
So do we have any corrections that we'd like to
There we go.
do at this point?
Okay, so do you want me to go through all these?
Well, any corrections that who is this Christina?
Yes, yeah,
Okay. Whatever you have, Christina, sure.
okay. So on page 1, the very first line, there's a dash in front of Ashford that doesn't belong there. Under number 1, call to order, it lists John Kopeck. I believe he should be listed as a member-elect as opposed to a full member.
Hold on. Angie, can you go on mute when you're not talking? Because there's
Yes.
something in the background.
Thanks. Okay, that's much better. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So under number 2, the word chair is missing the letter I. It should be chair, not char. Under number 5, the motion, there's a typo in the word meeting. There are 2 I's when there should just be 1. That's it for page 1. Can I keep going?
I believe there was a error with John Kopeck being as a member in the title.
Right. Yeah, I said that.
Yeah, he should be as a guest.
A guest, sure. So then on the second page, and the third paragraph down, it says is working the deep, and I think it should say is working with deep. And then at the bottom, under G, Board of Education Non-Lapsing Fund, in the text, it says extra funds will not always be available, so they are asking that the excess funds be placed in the non-lapsing fund. And they also ask that the fund be increased from 1 to 2%. And I think this could be debated, but I think it gets super confusing. So I would word it that they also ask that the maximum transfer be increased from 1 to 2% of the total education budget. So I would add the phrase maximum transfer and then of total education budget. I don't know if we want to discuss that, but that's my opinion. Doesn't sound like anybody wants to discuss it, so we'll just keep going. So
No, I'm
next
just
page.
thinking, oh, sorry, it took a second to come off mute. This is Paul Varga. I don't disagree with you. But the minutes are supposed to reflect what happened at the meeting, so I'm not sure. I think there was that level of confusion at the meeting, to be honest with you. But it doesn't really make any difference to me. I don't know about, I can't speak for anybody else on the board. If the board feels that that should be changed to reflect or to help people understand it if they're reading it, then that's fine.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you, Paul. I do have some other ones that I'd like to address. In item number 6, Ms. Abakoff's name spelled incorrectly, but on page 2, it says a proposal may be made in the future to the BOF once the funding of ARPA is known for a new floating position. This is incorrect. This wasn't said. I would take out the once the funding from ARPA is known. Also in that same paragraph, line 5, it says he noted that 65,000 has been expended. This is Mr. Filetti. He said 6,500 has been spended. Just give me 1 second. I don't know if I had anything else.
I had just 2 more on the next page very quickly. So this is page 3. 1, 2, 3, 4 paragraphs down. There are just 2 commas that I don't believe should be there. 2%, after the 2%, the comma should go away. And after the word budget, the comma should go away. And then under letter H, discussion and action regarding yada, 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 there's the word through that should be thorough. So her work at several other schools had not included such a thoughtful and thorough auditing group. And then my last note was just on the very last page, there's the phrase budget policy above number 9. And I just don't think that belongs there. It doesn't seem to fit with anything. So I think that just needs to be deleted.
Well, actually, that's a carryover from number 8 for agenda for January 13th. So originally we had put the budget policy, we had talked about putting it on the agenda for this meeting.
Should it all be on one line?
Oh, well, it should have been, in other words, number 8 carried over to page 4. So
I
it should have said.
understand that, but why is budget policy on its own line? It just is floating.
It was its own subject.
So shouldn't it be
it's on
like
subject.
8A and 8B? Like 8A is this agenda.
No. It could have been bulleted, but it was basically when you hit return and when the document transferred to PDF, it just moved that to the next page. That's all.
Well, I would recommend putting bullets there to make it clear that they're connected, because it doesn't look like they are at all.
Anybody else have anything they want to say or fix or? Okay.
I'm just going to add that budget policy is going to stay in the minutes because it was discussed. It just doesn't look good, but I can't.
Who's the recording secretary for the meetings?
It's Valerie. Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's just the way it printed out, Hugh.
Be the one who transcribes it into print?
I'm sorry?
Is Valerie the person who transcribes it into print?
No, it's me.
Okay.
So it comes to me as the clerk and I transfer it to the town to go on the website, and that's transferred into a PDF from there. It's just the way it happened.
Well, I
That's
just
one of
thought
those things.
most
It's
of
going to
these
be kind of difficult.
suggested emendations are editorial or copyright in nature.
Yeah,
So I didn't know if there was some way we could head it off at the pass and not take up.
Spell check worked really good, didn't it? Because spell check and grammar check obviously isn't working real well. So I'm going to
Oh,
have to.
don't beat yourself up about it. It's fine.
Well, no, I mean, like some of those, all those editorial ones should have been caught by either Valerie, myself, or the spell checker, and they obviously didn't. So I don't know if it's because of the document transfer or what, but in the future, I'll double check those. Like some of the misspellings are blatant, like chair.
Yeah, the words, chart, through, all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
it is
spell
a
check
word.
won't be-
So, yeah. And I will confess to, after you read this stuff for 5 times over, it does get a little difficult to read it. So that's the only change that was mentioned that I don't think should be a change, is that we need to leave budget policy in there. So.
Okay.
And that's it.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting for December 9th, 2021 with the suggested changes?
I think Angie made the original motion, right?
I believe so, yep. And you were second. And now we have to vote on it. All those in favor?
Aye, Angie DeSanto.
Aye, Paul Varga.
Aye, Judy Austin. Any others? All those opposed? Abstained.
Jesse
John
Burnham,
Koch.
abstain.
Was that Jesse abstain?
Yes,
And
that's
John
correct.
Kopek?
Yeah, and Garth, abstaining my life away, right?
Huh. Okay, so we had 3 in favor and 3 abstain. Not sure, Bill. Is that a pass? When you have a 3 and 3, what do you do, Bill?
You have a draw.
I think it's overtime, right, Bill?
Yes. Well, the
Staying
2
late.
abstentions, I believe they're abstaining because they weren't at the meeting or they weren't seated as a regular member. So I think you look to the majority of the members of those in attendance that were recognized.
Okay, so it would pass.
And Jesse Burnham here, one other thing I recall back when I was an alternate voting on the minutes. Is that correct, Catherine? That alternates can vote on the minutes?
If they were in
An
attendance, I
alternate
believe.
cannot vote on the minutes if they are not seated. The only
That's
people who can vote, the only people who can vote on anything are the people who are seated. It's a very basic rule.
So
correct.
Christina Davis and Hugh could actually vote on these minutes for the regular meeting because they were seated.
No,
No, because they're not seated now.
they were not.
Oh,
They're not seated.
okay. Even though they attended. All right.
Right.
Okay, so the majority was the 3 that were seated at that time. So the vote passes. Number 7 is new business for the selectmen's update.
Thank you, Judy. For those of you that weren't here at your last meeting or whatever, I just like to reiterate my congratulations to the newly elected members to your board, and for those that have been reelected. You serve a very important position and function for the town, and it's much appreciated for your efforts. I always say that after the election, we all should put politics aside, because I don't think any of us would be interested in serving on any of our boards if we weren't doing what we felt was for the best interest of the town. And I really think that although we may have some differences of opinions, our goals are pure in the fact that our efforts are for the benefit of our town. And that's much appreciated by myself, and I'm sure my board, of what you folks do. So thank you again. Not going to take up much time. I'll give you a brief overview of some things that are going on. And if any of you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Just one note about these minutes. My recollection of FOI is the only thing that the minutes are required to include would be specific motions and the votes. The other things that are in there, while they're informative, and I think it helps the public get the intent of what's going on. But regarding FOI and the requirements, it's the motion and the votes that are critical. One of the items that we've had some discussions that are ongoing are the Arpa Funds, and our board continues to research the Arpa Funds. We're consulting with sister towns, with NECOG, with the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities. It's new ground for all of us, and what we don't want to do is make commitments on any items and expenditures that we're not 100% sure are going to be covered under the ARPA fund requirements. And that's why it's going a little slow. It's not unique to our town. In fact, I spoke with 5 first selectmen today, and we're all in the same boat. The agreement was we're moving slow on this thing to make sure that we don't overlook something or make a commitment that, because if for some reason we were to make an expenditure and those funds were not approved under the ARPA requirements, the town would be liable for those funds. So that's cause enough for me, and I know my board, just to go slow on this thing. Some of the things that I am relatively comfortable are covered, are items that we're looking at. Improving broadband accessibility for areas in town that don't have access to broadband. I think it's clear within the requirements of ARPA that those are something that we can address. We're also looking at improving the communications for our Public Works Department and also our Ashford Volunteer Fire Department, and communication with our Board of Ed, so that there's an interaction between all of those through units. We have the availability of that, and of course, particularly in bad weather or emergencies, we think it's critical, and we're working to that means. Another item that we're looking at is improvement of existing recreational facilities. And some of the towns that I've noticed have already committed to expenditures and everything include many of those items. So we're going along those lines. Again, sound like a broken record, but we're going slow so we can be concise and not overcommit. Another item just to touch on is we are closely monitoring the COVID situation. As I'm sure you're all aware, we're in the middle of a surge because of the latest variant that's circulating. Our numbers have been going up. My office continues to monitor our local health department closely, CDC, and news in general on what's going on. I don't want to get overly optimistic, but the countries where the COVID variant initially started and experienced the huge surge in them are dropping off almost as quickly. And I'm certainly praying that that's the case for us. Our numbers, we have nothing to judge it on yet. And maybe Craig Kreller can address a little at the school when, if he so chooses, a little later down the line. But the numbers from the governor's office, while they're small declines, there have been minor declines in the percentages for positivity testing over the past 4 days. Regarding the school, and Greg could touch on this, they've been a little more impressive. For the past 4 days, we've been having declines. Up until that time, we were having reported high teens and early 20s as far as positive testing. And the last 3 days, Craig, you can correct me, but I believe we had 6. Yesterday we had 4, and today we had 2. Let's hope that trend continues. But again, we're monitoring that very closely. I know I signed off on a proclamation that our health department put out to the general public, and we're trying to get that out to our businesses and that are in the area. Not a mandate, but highly recommending that they take procedures to ask for masks to be worn by their staff and by those clients using whatever business it is. I think it just makes good sense, and I think we would all agree to that. Another item, and I'll be getting more information. I'll be talking to my board about this next Monday with a possible recommendation to you folks. In next year's budget under our plan, we've allotted about $70,000 for refurbishment of a line truck that's coming off the fire department. It's a tanker engine. And our highway foreman, and I've been meeting with him, doesn't feel that size vehicle is really going to serve the purpose that we need. There's a truck that's become on the market, and it's for a little less money than that, available to us somewhat immediately, that we think makes a lot more sense. What we're hearing from the local distributors on these vehicles, and the truck that we're looking to replace is on its last leg. It's something that we've been sort of bringing along year by year, but it's really drawing to a conclusion to have any dependability. But what we're hearing from the dealers and that is that if we don't get something that's on the lot now, it's quite possible it's going to take us 2 or 3 years to get a truck once we do commit to a new truck. So by your next meeting, and we're going to discuss this at our next selectmen's meeting, I'll probably be making a recommendation to you folks and see where you go from there. The last thing is we had a deadline for our departments and agencies to get their budgets into us by the 12th. I'm not sure the Board of Finance is in compliance with that yet, but they are pouring in and we're working on that. The departments are being as frugal as possible. We will be reviewing them, and I'm optimistic we're going to meet the deadlines and everything that we've set up on our budget schedule for this year. As you know, we kind of went out on a limb, and we've scheduled our referendum on our schedule the same day that E.O. Smith is, for several reasons, but I'm still optimistic that we're going to meet that goal. That's all I have, Judy. If anybody has any particular questions or anything from the board, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions before we move on? Okay. Next item of discussion is 7B, Board of Education Non-Lapsing Fund. The discussion on the policy change.
Judy, can I suggest maybe recognizing Craig to, I know he
Oh, I'm
sent,
sorry. I'm sorry. Hi, Craig. Would you?
Chairman Austin, thank you. If you'll just indulge me for 2 minutes or less, I promise. I want to wish everybody a happy new year. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I just want to very briefly revisit this issue and then offer you the opportunity to ask me any questions. Before I even get into the details, I want to say that there is no urgency with approving this fund. We can take our time with this. No vote has to take place tonight. There's no hard sell here. Essentially, Connecticut General Statute 10248A allows a town to put up to 2% of the yearly Board of Ed budget into a non-lapsing fund. Now, the fund itself, Ms. Davis was correct, can grow big. Sometimes these go into the millions in school districts, but you can only contribute each year 2% of your current Board of Ed budget to the fund. I had asked, and I sent a memo to the Board of Finance that two things have to happen. One, that the Board of Finance increase the current amount from 1% to 2%, which the law allows, and then that you accept the maximum possible return to that fund and to the town. Now, we return to the town $174,876. That was verified through the audit process. We would ask that 2% of our budget, which is $155,378, the maximum 2% be put into that fund. But it's a two-step process. You'd have to approve the higher limit of 2%, and then you would have to allow the rest. That would still leave a return to the town of about $19,000 to the town budgets. I say that with enthusiasm and conviction because it's unlikely in our generation and that we're ever going to have this opportunity again to put such a large amount into the non-lapsing fund. We have correctly used all of our 3 ARP ESSER grants. We're not going to have this opportunity again in the future. This is literally a once in a generation opportunity. And that's why I've continued to attend and offer my services and try to make this happen. So I'm open to questions. I'll answer anything anyone has. And I hope that the board will seriously consider providing the Board of Education this type of savings account. You never know what expenses may come up. I thank the board for the work we did in November and December when they approved the cameras out of the non-lapsing fund and the door fobbing. That was the last piece of our security puzzle. That was an excellent use of that money. It could be used for special ed expenditures, sometimes unexpected expenditures. We have a potential outplacement coming now that we didn't budget for. Sometimes when new families move to town, we have significant needs. The average special ed outplacement runs about $66,000 to $80,000 plus another 20 or 30,000 for transportation. So there's no way in a relatively small town that anyone can budget for those unexpected expenses. And that's the whole purpose behind the non-lapsing fund. So that's the end of my my sales pitch, and I'd be happy to answer any questions for you.
Craig, I have a question. Do you know exactly what the current balance is?
I do.
For the non-lapsing fund?
Dina Charzan, our business manager, who's also online tonight, as is Jane Urban, the Board of Ed chair. We reached out to Cheryl Baker at the town prior to your last meeting. That balance was $111,619 prior to the cameras and security measures you approved, which were $18,707. That leaves a net balance of $92,912 in that fund right now. $92,912.
Is that including the $17,500 that was allocated in February 28th?
So the balance of $111,619 was provided to us by Cheryl Baker in the town in August. So I would hope that her providing that number in August meant that she took out the February expense, and I'm sure she did because she's very good at this.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I just asked the question because I know neither Dina or Craig were here at that time, if they were aware that that fund was approved.
Cheryl was very on top of these things, so I would be confident that yes, she already took that out.
Okay. Do we know how much of this has been spent and where the rest of the money, just what we currently have, how much has been spent and where the rest of the money is going to be allocated at this point?
Chairman Austin, beyond the security cameras that you approved in November, we haven't allocated any of it. The account will continue to build as we put the maximum 2% in it. We have no allocation. This is an emergency fund, like a savings account for the Board of Ed, something we've never been able to do in the past prior to this new legislation.
Okay. So there's not an emergency plan or anything that you're waiting for us to, okay.
No. Thank you for asking. No.
Does anybody have any questions?
John Koch, I'm a little confused here. I thought that this account was limited to capital issues, like one-time capital. I don't want to say off the books, but not on capital improvement, but a one-time small capital expense. But it sounds like we're talking about this like a savings account that can be used for special ed expenditure overages, and I don't think that's the case here.
Chairman Austin, I'd be happy to answer that if you'd like.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think our town procedure says that the money should be used for capital expense. But the state says 10/248A that it's used for educational purposes. So I don't think the two procedures do it justice for its, for us to understand what it should be used for. They contradict each other. Craig, you got anything else to add?
No, that's accurate. The legislation only requires that it be used exactly for educational purposes. It's non-specific. The current Ashford language talks about capital, but that's an arbitrary restriction that the legislature has not addressed. It really can be used for anything.
That's why I was asking. Excuse me. That's why I was asking if the funds were already allocated for a project or something, because I know that our procedure says that it's for capital projects, which we do have funding for capital projects, but the state procedure says that it's required for educational purposes.
Can I just add one thing?
Christine, I acknowledge you.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate, I did a little research between the last meeting and tonight's meeting, and I looked at other towns' policies on these non-lapsing accounts, and it really runs the gamut. Some towns do, like Ashford, say that it should be for capital improvements, but some towns just say it's just for education. And so I think that was, my understanding is it must have been a decision of this Board of Finance at some point, perhaps in 2015, that this money should be for capital improvement plan, but it's not a requirement. The Board of Finance could change its mind if it chose to.
That's correct. I looked into how to go about what the process was if we were to go down the route where we wanted to make a change to a procedure in town, just to see, what the protocol was. And as far as this procedure, the board is responsible for this procedure, the creation, the editing, the approval, and that's what this discussion's about. It's just bringing to the forefront that the state does not jive with our town procedure.
I have a question. Hugh, I have a question.
Hi, Hugh.
What's going to take precedence, the state policy or the town policy? Could someone make a case the town trumps the state trumps the town, and then it could just be for whatever?
I believe it's whatever we decide we want in our own internal procedure.
So the
I mean,
town
if I'm,
policy would be, the town policy would be the determining factor in how the money in the fund is utilized. It would only be for capital projects.
correct, according to how it's written now.
And no one could make a case to challenge that? Could anyone challenge that if they wanted to?
Because according to the procedure, the unexpended education funds, allowable expenditures, the account is to be used for capital non-recurring expenditures as identified in the town's 5-year capital improvement plan. The intent of the account is to give the Board of E an avenue to accelerate their portion of a 5-year plan with prudent use of budget resources. So I would say that we really have to look at this procedure and discuss, with the rest of the members and selectmen what we want to do. Hi, Bill. Hi, Josh.
Just a couple of things to answer Hugh's question. Anything can be challenged, Hugh. Typically, a local zoning trumps state zoning if you're talking about that sort of situation, but anybody can challenge anything. I noticed Catherine had her hand up, and I believe when this policy was put into place, correct me if I'm wrong, Catherine, you were chairman of the Board of Finance. I'm thinking maybe you can give us some insight as to the logic behind the language in that.
Catherine?
Sure. At the time that this account was set up, there was a lot of concern about how the Board of Ed was managing their money. That was one. The other thing was that we had the option of creating this account or not. Many of the towns in Connecticut, I think majority, do not have this account. So what we did was looked at it and went, okay, let's make sure that we have a way to make sure that it isn't used frivolously, that the Board of Ed is being very conscientious about the budget that they're putting together, they expect. And what the hope was is that in the course of a year, the fiscal year, they would expend virtually all the money that they had been given that we taxed for. So what we did was we set up the proviso that it should be something that is, when all is said and done, the money should be for a capital improvement. The first one happened to be ovens for the kitchen. I can remember that. That it should be something like that. However, the board has the ability to change that. And also, you've also made an exception or two when it came down to something that was not a capital expenditure, if you will. So the board has the power to do that. You should look again at what you've got for the description of how you think this fund should be used. And yes, I agree with Bill, everything can be challenged, okay? The point was, certainly at that time, there were grave concerns about how the Board of Ed was managing their budget. So what we did was we set it up in a way that it could be 1%, and I can't remember if the 2% is in there or that it could go up to 2%. And the other thing too was how it could roll from year to year, because the original intent behind this kind of an account was not to have it roll from year to year. It was to be expended in the next fiscal year. So we set it up in a way that we thought was very fair, which was to make it so you could roll, so that if there was something that was an expenditure that the school really needed to make for something considered a capital expenditure, that there would be enough money in there for that. And they really, under the circumstances, they've used the money wisely. They've come to the board with good suggestions, requests for how they want to use it. And but the board has always had the power to actually take away that fund, which I would not recommend. I think we taxed for it. It shouldn't just go back into the town's coffers. To me, that's kind of cheating the public. Instead, it should be used for something for the school. And I can understand why there's as much money left over from the prior fiscal year because of COVID. And so there were a number of things the school was not able to do during that time. And as Superintendent Kreller said, you know, this is it's a one-time opportunity, and they're not going to be getting many of those. So that's to the board's discretion.
Hey, Judy, it's Paul. Can I?
Yes, Paul.
I just wanted to, two things. Thank you, Catherine, because you explained exactly what I was going to say. But secondly, the reason that the board does not have a draft policy tonight was because the chairman took the time to research what we needed to do to make sure we were crossing the T's and dotting the I's, et cetera, moving forward. So our current policy, as Catherine pointed out, is extremely restrictive, and that was built that way. I don't necessarily agree with removing all the restrictions for kind of the same reasons, and it's nothing personal. It's just as a taxpayer. And as a Board of Finance member, our job is to monitor some of that stuff. But certainly with what's gone on, and I think Mr. Kreller and Ms. Charzan have proven that they've worked really hard to get that money and use the grant money appropriately. So I'm hoping that either the next meeting or sometime in February, we can have a draft proposal that we can look at and discuss in depth to make that decision where the Board of Finance wants to go with this policy to allow the Board of Ed to use that money or have that money available to use if necessary. I mean, coming from an education background, I know that special ed is one of the biggest kicks, so to speak, that the Board of Ed gets when somebody moves in the town. You know, we all talk about capital projects as being expensive, but some of the special ed costs can be very, very crippling, especially to a small town like us. So it's a catch-22, if you will. So I just want people to understand why we don't have that tonight as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Bill? Bill?
Excuse me. I'd just like to reiterate, when the Board of Finance back in 2015 was considering this, I supported it. I continue to support it. I mean, I've heard this special education situation, that some of our sister towns have found themselves in as a result of placements in their towns. They're like time bombs. And it's not something that you have the luxury of deferring those costs to the next fiscal year. You have to address it as it comes up. And, you know, the other thing I think that while the policy is set by the Board of Finance, you also have the ability to address, upon appeal from the Board of Ed, each of these things on a case-by-case basis. And I think it should be done that way.
Okay. Catherine?
A simple change to the policy would be that it be used for capital improvements or capital purchases, or at the Board of Finance's discretion for other educational purposes. It might be as straightforward as that. I see Craig has his hand up.
Craig?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate all the comments, especially Mr. Varga, Mr. McKenzie. Anyone can challenge anything. We're not here to challenge. We want to work in harmony with the town. I feel like the town has a very good capital improvement process, which we'll be participating in shortly. I just want to make clear that our greatest exposure is not capital. Our greatest exposure is unexpected special ed outplacements, and then any safety security measures as required by statute or just prudence. So I just want to put that out there. So I appreciate all the comments that have been made. I really, really do.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay.
I have a question. It's Christina.
Christina?
So, and maybe this is a question for Craig, or I don't know, but is it possible to rewrite the policy to say it's for capital expenditures or special ed?
Catherine? Oh,
I don't know that
Craig?
I would make it that restrictive. It might not be special ed. It might be something else. And if the money is there and we taxed for it, and the Board of Ed or the superintendent is able to come forth and provide the facts to make a justifiable case, I'd hate to have you hamstrung by having a policy that has now become so restrictive as capital expenditures, capital improvements, or special ed. You might as well make it, its primary focus was supposed to be capital improvements. But if you just add to it or other educational needs, other Ashford school educational needs, then you've covered anything they could come up with that is a real need. And by the way, in the past, the vast majority of what they've asked for have been for capital purchases. And in fact, Craig, just the cameras and all of that would have been considered a capital expenditure. So when we talk about special ed, yeah, that's a different thing.
So, Catherine, if they're using the monies from the school for the capital improvement for these cameras, why aren't they going to the town for the capital improvement?
If they have capital improvements that they need, and they would be, in general, they'd be the larger ones. I can't remember what our threshold is. I can't remember if we changed it from $5,000 to $10,000 threshold. I think you did. And I think, let's see, do we have Cheryl on tonight? I think you changed the threshold for a capital improvement or a capital investment of some kind from 5,000 to 10,000 on something. Anyway, trying to figure out how to phrase this. Ask the question again, please. I want to make sure I give you the answer you're looking for.
So, just to clarify, they're spending this money on capital projects for the school, like the cameras and stuff. Why aren't they going to the town's capital improvement committee?
And they should be. They should be. What we had before is they did not have a very strong leadership in bringing their or planning for their capital improvements to be brought to the capital improvements committee. They weren't really, in my opinion, and this is over years, they were not prepared. So that was one of the reasons that we set up this fund this way, it's kind of like you can't come in after the fact and go, I need $17,000 for new ovens or whatever. And because they could only come to the town once. So what I think we have now is we have a superintendent and a board that are much more oriented to future planning. And, and they're going to have unexpected stuff. They're going to have a boiler that dies or something like that. And if it wasn't on their capital improvement plan because they didn't know that was going to happen, this is a safety net for them.
But doesn't that fall under the town's responsibility for capital because it's involved with the building? The building
only if they know in advance. That's the only way it gets on the capital improvement plan. And that plan is approved at referendum for the year. Otherwise, you have to have a town meeting for everything that's asked for that's over $20,000. So I'm gonna mute myself so that Craig can respond. It looks like he has something he wants to say.
Craig?
Thank you, Chairman Austin. I would favor the more vague language or language that is closer to the statute, which just says for educational purposes, because I am putting my faith and my trust in all of you, the Board of Finance, because at the end of the day, the Board of Finance would have to approve any and all expenditures from this fund. It's not just a blank check where we can dip into it. So I'd like to think that all of you, in conjunction with a strong presentation, will reach a good decision. So I have great confidence in you. I have no trouble coming before the Board of Finance for any legitimate purchase, and we can have an honest discussion about whether it's a good choice or not. So, you know, at the end of the day, the Board of Finance rules the day here, for lack of a better term. So there's really no need for the language to be that restrictive, because if you thought an expense or any type of spending was frivolous, then you would not approve it. And that would be the end of it. So I'm going to put my trust and faith in all of you.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Yeah, I'd just like to elaborate a little more. In a perfect world, we would be able to anticipate all of our expenditures in the upcoming year. The capital improvement budget is made up during the budget process by a well thought up and assigned committee. But by the nature of what we all do, there are emergencies that come up that have to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. And to me, security needs, for whatever reason that they come up, certainly can present themselves on an emergency basis. And when I hear from the Board of Ed that they need to enhance their camera abilities for security, and they justify it, I think that's an emergency need. And that's why I would also support the language that's presently in the state language with verbiage regarding educational needs, with the understanding that the Board of Ed will give us justification on what they're asking for. And there's a trust in that. I can't always say there was, and I don't think we need to look back, we should be looking forward. But there was a time when there were certain projects that were started up at the school without permits, without the Board of Finance's knowledge, without the Board of Selectmen's knowledge. And we all had to work together to try to clean those scenarios up. I don't anticipate that happening anymore. And this 1% fund and the policy that you developed to make those decisions, I think is well thought of.
Okay, do we have any further discussion? Does anybody else have questions, clarifications?
Hi, this is John again. I thought I read somewhere that this is capped at 3% in total. So if you have a leftover dollar amount in there, that you still can't put in more than the 3% total by adding either 1 or 2% in a given year.
I think it says you're not to exceed 2% and used only for educational purposes, but I don't think there's a cap.
Judy, Paul?
Yep, hi, Paul.
Yeah, our policy does have a 3% cap written into it. The current Board of Finance policy. The state statute no longer has, or maybe it never had a cap. I don't remember. But our policy, again, and Catherine is going to talk about it, it's got a cap in it right now. So John is not incorrect. It does have a cap.
Okay.
If I could speak,
Catherine?
the state said 1% back when, and you couldn't roll it over. And so what we did was we looked at it and went, okay, if you had $7,000 left over 1 year and you didn't use it in the next fiscal year, we let you roll it over. And you know, if you had 20,000 in that second fiscal year, then you had 27,000 in the third year. The whole point was to never have a situation where you were putting so much money into that fund that it would exceed in total 3% of the current school budget at any point in time. You know, we were generous in what the rollover would be. Prior to that, there was no rollover. It's supposed to be used in the next fiscal year. So, yeah, I liked that because one of the things is that the Board of Finance always had the opportunity to look and go, is the Board of Ed bringing too much money back? You know, we have an unusual situation in this prior fiscal year, but I would not expect to have that much money coming back each year. And I don't think that that puts us at 3% at this point with that amount. No, it does. I don't think it does. So that's why we put that in there. It was a generous move, and it was meant to allow them to continue to roll over without having to be concerned about the fact that they hadn't yet used the money that they had had left over for a couple of years. The point was for them to be able to use it for something that was really important that they couldn't fit into their normal budget.
Any other questions, concerns?
This is John again. So what is our intention tonight? I guess let's start with that.
So I think the intention tonight was just to discuss the whole process of the procedure, the differences between our internal procedure, town procedure, and the state procedure, to look at more clarity of what we currently have. You know, we need the numbers for what we've actually spent. I think it was just a discussion for the new board to get an idea of basically how this is used, where it's used, and what we have.
So as far as motions for tonight, we're not moving any money.
I don't believe there'll be any motion tonight. I think this is something everybody needs to take their time, think about. We're not changing a procedure right away because we're going to be thinking about the verbiage if we do, and that will be up to the board if we even want to change the procedure. And then the moving of the money does not have to happen until June. So as Craig said, we have time to get your thoughts together, your concerns together, and we can address it again and discuss it at the next meeting, or, you know, however comfortable the board is. Catherine?
Just a reminder, if you don't move the money before June, the school cannot use it. So I'm not sure where the June deadline comes in. Actually, I guess there is a deadline because you have a fiscal year where you have to do something with the monies that are left over from the previous fiscal year. But just a reminder, they wouldn't be able to use that money until then.
That's why I was asking if there was something that they had concerns about in the beginning of this discussion, because if there was something that they needed right away, then perhaps we could move it a little quicker. But according to Craig, he's not concerned about that. He wants us to take his time, which I am grateful for, and I really appreciate, you know, you understanding that we need to discuss it. Thank you.
I hope nothing else comes up in the meantime.
Well, if it does, he can come to us, let us know, and we'll talk about it. Bill? Bill?
Yeah, I had a question for Craig. Per your last Board of Ed meeting, there were discussion about engineering for the removal of the oil tank. How are those funds being secured, and are you all set on that, Craig?
We are. We will just need the capital approval through the town's capital process for that.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
Okay. And refresh my memory. Do I recall that the motion was to try to get that accomplished in the next fiscal year?
The expectation or the hope was to do it in summer of 2022, which is this upcoming summer. However, the tank has to be out of the ground by December 31st of 2023. And we can only attack a project that size in the summer because it could take anywhere from 2 weeks to a month, especially if there's any remediation of the soil or environmental contamination. But we'd like to do it this coming summer, but we have to do it in summer of 2023. Obviously, you can't pull the oil tank out of the ground in the winter while we're using it when it's 4 degrees. So that would be high on the priority list.
Thank you.
I have a question or two. Hugh.
Okay, Hugh. Hi, Hugh.
Hi. This whole special ed aspect of the potential fund utilization is a new wrinkle to me. So I wonder if I could find out in the past 10 years how many special ed students have unexpectedly become part of the Ashford Community School System family, and what it costs per month to take care of one special ed student, and how many special ed students the school system currently has.
Hi, Craig.
We're happy to share that information. I'll get you very accurate numbers. I can email that to you tomorrow, Mr. McKenzie. It's really the unexpected outplacements that are the real bite to the budget, and they can be anywhere from the lowest I've seen, 66, up to well over $100,000 per student, and we may actually have one of those this year. This happens in every town. This is not unique to Ashford. This is a real challenge in the state of Connecticut, and actually part of the impetus behind the non-lapsing fund was this problem.
I understand the expensive nature of special ed students. I just wonder how often it's happened in town, because there's no kind of predictability for its occurrence to take into consideration for expansion of the funding. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Hey, Judy, can I make a motion that we table both of these items? B, I guess it's just 2 bullet points under B. If you want a date, I don't know if you think we can have a draft in place for next meeting. It's 2 weeks away. Or do you want to table it to the first week of February, so that the board members have time to do their own research, and you have time to put a policy out there for them to read, and maybe Mr. Kreller can answer some of the questions that the board members have asked. I don't want to wait till June. That's not the case at all, but I want the people to have time, the board members to have time to review this, because the language is very confusing, and the difference between the state statute and the our policy is quite different and much more restrictive. So, Mr. Kreller has brought up some valid points. Hugh had some valid points. Everybody actually has had some valid points that I think the board needs to say. So I'll say we can table it till the January 27th meeting, and if we don't have or I'll make a motion to table to the January 27th meeting. How's that? Just make it simple.
That sounds fine. Can we get a motion to table it to January 27th?
So moved. I'll make the motion. I just need a second.
I'll second it. You think the 27th is going to be good enough, or?
I don't know if
We'll go with
I don't know if you got all the answers. I think we got most of the answers that we needed, but I want enough time for the board members to look at it. That's my concern, so that if they have specific questions. I mean, at the very least, if you can if we can get a draft policy change out there, then if we discuss it again in January and we don't vote until February, we still have a month or so left before we have to worry about moving the money.
Okay.
That's all. I don't want to keep pushing it, because I don't want to procrastinate it to the point where we're under the gun. But at the same time, I don't want people to feel forced to have to make a decision without the information that they may want. So,
Judy, just a point of order. I think you've got a motion that's been made, but it has not been seconded yet.
I seconded, Bill.
Okay,
Judy Austin.
okay.
Okay.
So are we at the discussion phase then?
We are,
I would think so.
yeah.
I have a few concerns that I was going to wait to bring up, but if there's going to be time spent writing policies, then I guess I should say my concerns now. I have concerns about expanding the usage of the fund beyond what we've done. I mean, we can, but it's a very different direction than what we've been doing for the last several years. So I think lots of thought is deservedly to go into that. It's a 1-year windfall. We're talking about changing a policy that's going to stay changed for years for. I have concerns about overutilizing a fund, over budgeting to make sure we can utilize the 2% at the end of the year. Those are things that can happen, and I think they're concerning. The other thing is, this is not the Board of Education's money. It's also not the town's money. This is the taxpayers' money. And we are going into a year right now that is going to be brutal. We have massive increases we're looking at for going into E.O. Smith because of our change from last year to this year. We have a reevaluation hitting this year that is, I'm looking at the changes on my property, and it's frightening. We have changes to PA 490 going in this year for percentages. We kind of have a perfect storm of hits coming for the taxpayers this year, and I think that warrants consideration when we're talking about surplus money that's been taxed for.
Thank you, John. Catherine?
That money was taxed for the school. It was intended for the school. The school budget was approved by referenda. So I get the concept of it's the taxpayers' money, but they were that budget was approved by the town, and that's the money they were given.
Bill?
So if you're saying it was approved by the town and it was approved at 1%, are you saying it should stay at 1%?
The town did not approve the 1% policy. That was a Board of Finance policy. The town approved the budget for the school at referenda, and that money was part of the budget.
At the time the money was approved, it was 1%.
That is not what we're talking about. I'm talking about the fact that the money that was approved, the entire budget, if I could finish, please, the entire budget that was approved for the school included that money. So we just moved it, the Board of Finance just moved it over into the 1% fund when there was monies left over, okay? The bottom line is there's a moral aspect of this as well. The town voted on the school budget and they gave them that money.
I don't know if morality is quite the question, but I do appreciate your explanation. Thank you.
Bill?
I'd like to think there's some morality left.
Exactly. Bill?
Ethics perhaps in this case. Not morality is a whole different ballgame.
On a lighter note, I attended the Board of Education E.O. Smith meeting the other night. They had their preliminary budget hearing, and I've been of the assumption that it's our turn up at bat this year at E.O. Smith, and I was corrected when I mentioned that it's Mansfield's turn up at bat, and they have a huge influx of more revenue coming in. I have worked with Craig because I'm very much interested in. One of my questions the other night to the superintendent at E.O. Smith was, how are we doing on our enrollment projections We were scheduled to go up to 196 students in this next coming year. And my understanding is that enrollment has been depleted, and I'm trying to get a number. 10 students may not be a big number for Mansfield to digest, but it's certainly a big number for us. So what I'm optimistically looking forward to is perhaps the hit that we're going to take next year at E.O. Smith is not quite as drastic as it looked to us last year. And stay tuned on that.
Okay, so it appears that there's a lot of unknowns, and we're going to have to work together as a team and try to figure out what the best decision is for Ashford. Let's not get frustrated or, give each other a hard time. Let's try to figure out what we need to do. Hugh, I could see your point about the 1%. I mean, and John, there's things that we can think about. I mean, these are just things I'm popping out of my head to, maybe help a little. But, we have the procedure at 1%. Nobody says that we have to, change it if we're not comfortable with it. It's, a new year, new team, new management. There's lots going on. We could approve the 1% and put the rest into the capital. I mean, there's lots of options to do. So why don't we take a breath, think about what we talked tonight about, and try to logically think of how we can work together as a team to get the goal that everybody is somewhat happy. I don't think everybody's going to be happy, but somewhat happy. Anybody got any other conclusions, remarks? Christina?
Yeah, I just want to point out that, the date on this policy is 2015, so that's 7 years ago. And I think it makes sense to revisit it and see how it should be adjusted given the current circumstances.
I appreciate your opinion. Anybody else?
No, Judy, it's Paul. Since I made the motion, I'm going to ask that we vote on the motion.
Okay.
The table.
So we have motion to table. Where am I again? The non-lapsing fund policy change for discussion, and table the discussion and possible transfer of the funds from the unassigned fund balance. All those in favor?
Angie DeSanto, aye.
Paul Varga, aye.
Jesse Burnham, aye.
John Kopek, aye.
Judy Austin, aye.
It's Garth. I'm sticking with an abstain just because it's my theme for the night.
Thank you, Garth. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6, 6 in favor and 1 abstention. Okay.
Judy,
Next.
it should be five in favor and 1 abstain.
1, 2,
Yeah, Judy, and it's not obstination because that's like obstinate. It's more abs.
I put somebody's last name. That's what the 5th one. I apologize.
And some people might say obstinate, and maybe that fits, but
abstain.
But it's
okay.
Abstinent.
All right, go ahead, bring it on. So we're good. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor and 1 abstain. Okay, the next item is 7C. It's our FY 22-23 budget review of the Board of Finance. Request submitted to the selectmen, which I did send it to the town hall, but apparently I did not send it direct route. I believe you guys have received a copy of this via email. Does anybody not have it? Hello? Does everybody have the budget for the Board of Finance? Okay.
I do not. John Kopic.
Okay, John.
That's my fault, John. I apologize. I will, do you have access right now to email?
Sure.
Okay, I will attempt to get it to you ASAP. It's because your name wasn't on the list yet when I compiled it. Sorry.
No problem.
I'll give you a minute so that hopefully it's not snail mail and you'll have it. Let me know if you do get it, John.
I'll let you know, but you can start without me. I'll catch on as soon as it comes in.
Okay, so basically what I did for the budget is I followed last year's. The only changes that were made were to the recording secretary. Her figures are based on a 29 meeting agenda for the regular meetings. And then the audit expense went up a little because I took from King and King Associates roughly 60% of the cost because we share it with the school, and then I added the federal single audit. So it went up slightly, but that's the best guesstimate that I knew to do at this time because I don't know exactly what the school share is. So those are the only two items that were changed on my budget, on our budget. Any questions? Concerns?
Yes, Judy, this is Jesse. I see it says the actual for audit expense is up to 32,000. We only budgeted 24,000 so for year 22.
Yeah, I don't believe it's all paid out yet. I was having a hard time getting, like I said, the school portion versus our portion, and it's kind of like this is not a done deal yet. You know, the figures aren't spent yet.
Okay.
I think I can answer his question. So,
Okay.
Jesse, because of the way the finance office pays that out, the bill is paid, I believe, through the Board of Finance, but then the Board of Ed will be billed their share, and that returns back to our line item to offset that additional amount that you see. So there's a cost sharing with the audit, in other words. The Board of Finance is responsible for the audit, but we cost share the cost with the Board of Ed. So that just hasn't been reconciled yet. That's a Cheryl question, and Cheryl's not here to answer the question, but that was Judy and I both asked her the same question, and that was the explanation, is the cost share hasn't gone through.
Okay, well that sounds good. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't budgeting
Yeah,
way
because Judy and I went, what's that?
Yep. So that's this is what we're going to be submitting to you, Bill. It's what we have, basically. So, anybody else have any concerns or questions? Okay. Okay, so we're on to agenda item 8 for items for the January 27th regular meeting. Jesse, I apologize. I meant to put the FY 2021 Town Annual Review Update as an item for this meeting, but I didn't, so it's next meeting. And then the review of the budget policy would be another item that maybe we should tackle. And I'm not quite sure about the FY 22-23 review expenditure and review revenue reports.
I think you mean 21, 22, right?
For the revenue reports, expenditure and revenue reports?
Yeah, that's the current fiscal year, 21, 22 is what we're in.
Yes.
Okay. So just, if you don't mind, Judy, here's what I have, because so I have the Bill mentioned the public works truck, possibly. Yep. Then we have item set from 7B from this meeting, both bullets. And I don't know, Jesse, if this is correct, fiscal year 2020 to 2021 annual report, or are we talking about is that the correct one that you just received? Or do we need to review the annual report? We already approved the annual report for 1920, did we not?
The one I gave? The one I did?
No.
For the Board of Finance part?
Well, you would have been submitting an annual report for the report that we're going to start collecting and compiling.
Right, it's 2021.
Yes,
right.
2021.
So that's correct. She was right. I just wanted to make sure I wrote it down correctly. And then the budget
you
policy.
started getting me confused.
Yeah, sorry. There's too many numbers. The budget policy and then expense and revenue for the current fiscal year 21-22 review. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Sure. Go ahead, Christina.
Is there going to be any kind of review of what the reval numbers came in and what the impact that is going to have on the budget? Like, who's in charge of? I would think that that's going to impact our budget. And so is someone from the town going to give a presentation on that and help explain what the impact is going to be?
Yes, during the process, we'll be inviting people in to help us out, giving us information on all aspects of the town. Bill?
Yeah, Christina, I've also asked the assessor to put down sort of a summary of explanation. And once we edit that and I have a chance to go over it, we're also going to try to put something up on the website because obviously we're getting some inquiries about that.
Yeah, I think I would just encourage like more communication and transparency on that, because I think people are freaking out, and it's probably doesn't have to be necessarily a freak out. It might be okay, but I think people are kind of starved for information about what the impact is going to be.
Believe me, there are a few people that are freaked out. On residential, our average is around 20-21%. Lake areas are almost double that. And there's other particular items that have gone up even more than that. It's not unique for our town. What I'm trying to do is have our assessor looking at some comparisons on what other communities are doing. I handle the financial affairs of an aunt of mine in East Hartford. She's got a 2-family home. She received a 42% increase in valuation. So I think particularly where they're using an income-based formula, and given the facts of the inflation as we're seeing them today, there's a lot of people that are a bit shell-shocked. But I agree, we'll get some information out on that and certainly review it with your board as early as possible.
I mean, shouldn't the company, because there's an outside company that does the reval, right? Shouldn't they come and do a presentation?
That hasn't happened in the past. We can certainly consider that.
I mean, we paid them to do the work, right?
Oh, we sure did.
The ball is in our court now. The reevaluation doesn't really mean anything until we decide budget. Because when we decide how much money we need, we will adjust the mill rate based on the evaluation. So just because the property values went up, we could, if we had a 0% budget increase, the mill rate would come down to collect the same amount of tax. But the problem, the tricky area comes in where certain people's valuations went up more than others because of work done on houses and properties and all this other stuff. So it doesn't impact everyone the same no matter what. So the taxpayers are going to be in the dark until we start looking at budgets and seeing where things are trending.
Yep.
Under a typical reval, the commercial base of a community usually takes a bigger hit. But in a situation like we are in Ashford here, where the far majority of our tax base is residential, not so much so. But as John was touching on, there'll end up being a balancing between what the new estimates are for our grand list and the mill rate and adjustments made that quarterly, that basis.
Okay. Catherine?
Just a point I learned a number of years ago. If the town, in doing a reval, does not come in within 10% of what the state thinks the town should have for a reval, you have to do the reval over. Just a tidbit.
Okay, so now we're on to item number 9, remarks for the good of the board. I have a couple things I'd like to share with you guys. I've been spending a lot of time doing different things this week at home. So some of the information I found out that may be helpful for us in a learning process for me, perhaps you too. I learned if you are unable to come to a meeting and you want somebody in particular to be seated for you, you need to send me that in writing for that meeting, who that person is. If you do not send it to me in writing and we go into the meeting and I have to seat alternates, we have to place it to a vote. I did not know this. I've never done this. I've been on the board for years, but I found this out, that we vote to place that alternate person in the open space. And anybody at any time during the beginning of the meeting, if I don't do that, can speak up and say, hey, we need to, vote on putting somebody in that spot. So that was a learning curve for me. The second thing I learned was with the Board of Finance minutes, they must be accurate, especially when it comes down to figures. We really have to be careful about reviewing the figures that we say, how we write them, and making sure that they get recorded, because that's all Cheryl goes by when she goes to pay the bills. And we have a pretty heavy duty responsibility to make sure that out of all the boards, our minutes are as accurate as possible. And then another thing I found out that was helpful was, I know I have sent you guys an email about the CMM courses. Now, the CMM courses, there's a lot of free ones. I spent the majority of my Saturday attending at least 3 of them, which I found very informative. And all you have to do is go to that email that I sent you, click on there, and sign up to register. There's another class on Thursday, January 20th. The course is on ethics, FOIA, and public meetings. It's 1 to 3. Now that's a Thursday. That might be tough for those who work. But on Saturday, January 22nd, 9 to 10:30 a.m., there's a course for newly elected Municipal Budgeting 101. That one was a pretty good course to attend. So I mean, if you get the opportunity, I found that they were very good. And once you register, you can go in and you can review any of the minutes and meetings that they have, the seminars that they have online. So I found it helpful anyway. I figured I'd share that. And last but least, I wanted to acknowledge and thank all the board members for being part of this team. And welcome, John. I'm glad you're finally on. As an unpaid public servant, you are amazing people to step up to the plate when you could take your precious time and spend it at home with your families. At times it must be frustrating, but remember, we all have the same interest to do our best for the town. I want to thank all the people who make this town run smoothly on a day-to-day basis and the great resources we have to guide us through this process. I appreciate all the people in the town hall that have reached out and helped me and Paul go through this process and the board. And I'm looking forward to working with everybody and making us a strong team. Thank you.
Judy, I have a small correction to one of the things that was stated.
Catherine.
When it comes to having someone seated for you at a meeting, it is not necessarily for a specific meeting. You can send something to the chair, and you should send it to the town clerk that says who you want seated in your absence. So it could be for any meeting, not just a specific meeting. And if you look at legislation, you'll see what that is.
Yeah, that's actually.
According to the seminar that I watched through the CMM state website, it said that it had to be for the specific meeting.
It varies by board, and the Board of Finance is very specific in the rule book. So it does say that it's for individual meetings, the way it's worded in the rule book for Board of Finance.
Thank you. I stand corrected.
Thank you. Thank you, though. Okay. Now's the fun time. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I do.
Is there?
Angie DeSanto.
Thank you, Angie. Do I have a second?
Jesse Burnham, second.
Good meeting, Judy. Thank you. Good night, folks.
Oh, wait, you gotta finish.
Yep,
Oh.
gotta vote.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you.
Arthur, you're gonna
you.
abstain again, just because?
Thank you all.
Of course. Of course.
Thanks,
To
Judy.
the very end.
Have a good night.
Abstaining.
Too.
Bye.
I think John left and forgot to turn us off record.